I'm not aware of any other subs, Chairman, Chair.
Do any members have any declarations of interest that they need to make? No? Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on to item 3 then, the minutes of the previous meeting. Does anybody have any comments that they need to make in relation to the minutes of the previous meeting held on the 25th of April? No. I did note one item in there. There was an item of information, a spreadsheet that we were going to have distributed, and I don't think it was actually distributed. It was something Simon Sowerby brought. So we might chase that up. It's probably irrelevant to the newer members because they wouldn't know what it related to, but it was something that we should have had circulated. Thank you. Okay, on to item 4 then, the Health and Safety Annual Report for 2021-22. And I understand that we've got Georgie on Zoom who's going to give us a rundown on that. So off you go, Georgie, please.
Yeah, can you all hear me okay? Yeah, okay. Yeah. So you'll all have the report in your pack, so I'll take you through the main points. In terms of the year, obviously some of the work of the service was disrupted through COVID. However, that being said, we still managed to achieve all the outcomes that we needed to. In terms of policies and guidance, we reviewed the employee protection policy. That was completed and finalised, and staff have now got that available to them. The alcohol, drugs and substance misuse policy was reviewed. This was implemented at the back end of last year, and we're working now through training and some of the implementation processes in terms of some of the more stringent testing requirements that we need, and an increased level of what's considered acceptable in alcohol. And the driving for work policy was reviewed, is ongoing review, and the corporate health and safety policy was updated to reflect other alterations to other policies. The system that we use in terms of monitoring some of our health and safety information is Target 100. We do have that on the work plan to review and amend as the version is becoming out of date. What we had to do first, though, is sort out the organisational structure. We've had some changes in terms of our operating model, which has meant that hierarchies have changed and line management responsibilities changed, and we need the structure to be finalised and that to be input into the system for us to be able to update that system. That structure has now been sorted. We now do have the hierarchies, and we need to move forward with that piece of work. Throughout the year, despite the COVID situation, the health and safety training has been ongoing and completed as it should be. We've had first aid refresher training through St John's Ambulance, which has meant that our first aiders are up to date with their work. Lone worker training has been implemented via an online package, and take-up has been positive with most staff we needed to complete in that course. Risk assessment training has been undertaken online as well. IOSH, both leading safely and managing safely, has been completed throughout the different tiers of the organisation. In terms of accident reporting, what you can see in section 5 is the number of accidents reported and through the employees, but also number which are then reportable. As you can see, the numbers for this year are positive in terms of the trajectory moving forward. And there's no concerns in terms of the accidents happening within the organisation. What you can see in section 5.2 is our RIDDOR reporting. Our RIDDORs are any incidents or accidents that result in significant time away from the workplace for the individual. And it's a positive message with those in terms of the fact that they are going down. Near misses and learning, actually, although you can see that the near misses are increased slightly, that actually means that people are reporting those misses and we're learning from them within the organisation. So that's a positive figure that we're noticing when these things happen. And our dangerous occurrences remain low. Section 5.3 then shows us the monthly breakdown of all accidents in 2021-22. And again, there's no significant numbers on here that they give us any cause for concern. We're reporting our accidents internally as we should, as I said before, recognising the near misses, and with very few RIDDOR reportable accidents happening within the workplace. The 4 that were reported to RIDDOR, as I said, that's around anybody who then has time off work through the accident in the workplace. We have 4 reportable, and the remedial actions all been taken forward in those cases. There weren't any significant injuries or illnesses as a relation to those accidents. Before I move on to section 6, does anybody have any queries around that, or shall I just press on?
Yeah, please carry on.
Yeah, okie doke. As with the training and other matters, the health and safety audits and inspections were affected by COVID. However, despite that fact, we still managed to conduct inspections of all the following sites within the borough: Jubilee 2, Kidsgrove Customer Service Centre, Keele Cemetery, Bradwell Crematorium, and Waste and Transfer sections at Nutton Depot. In March 2022, we've recommenced those inspections, and the external audit was commissioned by Waste and Recycling, which reviewed the health and safety requirements. In June 2021, the results of the external audit were undertaken by Stoke-on-Trent City Council. There were 2 recommendations, one of which has been completed, and the other one is underway. At Nutton Depot, the Health and Safety Committee, despite the COVID disruptions, managed to hold their committee meetings in April, July, October and January. And all of the actions and matters arising from those meetings are included in this report, and have all been taken forward as they should. The minutes and action logs from the meetings are reviewed at the Corporate Health and Safety Committee meetings, and any actions they're taken forward. The Corporate Health and Safety Committee held the following meetings in the period, so that's April, July, October and January, with a significant work plan which we've worked through to make sure that our health and safety is compliant and as it should be. Fire evacuations were undertaken across the council properties from December to January, with no issues raised and no concerns raised. Fire marshals are aware and compliant with their duties, and the staff and the controlling officers all executed their duties well. Brampton Museum and Kidsgrove Customer Services were brought back into the regime after they were closed for different reasons. Staff at the museum were provided with the general fire training and the EVAC chair training to make sure that everyone working at the new site understands their responsibilities. In terms of events within the borough, there were some events that happened, although as you'll be aware, significant disruption in the planned events due to COVID, but the events held as detailed below were all undertaken safely and compliant with our legislations. Castle House has had a lower occupation for the majority of the period. However, we're seeing people come back into the workplace now, which is very positive, and we're reminding people of their duties under health and safety as they return to the workplace. The evacuation project had stalled because of COVID, but now we're continuing with that piece of work. So that's making sure that people are safe if there's an external threat. The beacon and the alerting system was tested recently, and that was seen to be too loud. So we have to review that in terms of safety, in terms of people's hearing. But the thumb turns have been installed in the doors, and so the procedure itself can be carried forward. We just need to make sure that the alarms are set as they should be. The rear barrier intercom have been identified as some defects, and I think work is going on to make sure that the repairs to those have been effectively undertaken. We've implemented first aid training between November and March, and all staff who have been trained in first aid, their details are now available to all staff as the training's been refreshed. As you can see, finally, that COVID's had a varying impact on the services of the council. We've had lockdowns, we've had reduced staffing and absences. However, despite this fact, we are still compliant in terms of all our health and safety obligations. Our accidents have remained low, and we have reported in line with the legislation. So it's a positive story in terms of health and safety. Obviously significant disruptions due to some of the things that we could and couldn't do, but we've certainly caught up with the responsibilities that we needed to.
Georgie, does anybody have any questions for Georgie on the issues that she's just discussed with us? No. Okay, thank you very much, Georgie. No questions tonight.
Righto, I'll stand down then. Thank you.
Right. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Okay, we just need to note that. So moving on to item 5 then, it's the annual governance statement for 2021-22, which we need to approve this evening. And Sarah's going to run through that for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. It's the annual governance statement for 21-22. The report seeks approval for the annual governance statement, which forms part of the statement of accounts. Under the accounts and the audit regulations 2015, the council is required to publish the annual governance statement with the financial statements. In preparing the annual governance statement, information provided from the Chief Executive and Executive Directors in the form of manager assurance statements have been supplied and reviewed. The governance roles and responsibilities can be seen on page, I think it's page 27 of the agenda. As you'll see, there's quite a number of service areas and officers who actually feed into the Code of Corporate Governance and producing those good governance principles. Good governance is crucial as it leads to good management, good performance, good stewardship of the public money, good public engagement, and ultimately good outcomes for the residents and the service users. I'm happy to put forward the annual governance statement for 21-22. As I said, it forms part of the statements of accounts, and happy to take any questions from anybody about the information that's actually in there.
Thank you, Sarah. Does anybody have any questions? Mike?
Just a very quick one, Chair. I mean, are there any significant changes from the previous one? I know we usually take it from the set for sort of best practice, but are there any significant changes that we need to go into? No.
No, there aren't. We do still cover COVID, obviously, because we were still experiencing the impact of COVID and those principles around it. But no, nothing is significant change that I need to tell you about.
Okay. Do we have any other questions? No. Okay, are we happy to approve that then in that case? Yep. Okay, thank you. That's approved then. Item number 6 then, the proposed accounting policies, critical accounting judgments and sources of estimation uncertainty for the 2021-22 statement of accounts. And Craig's going to go through these for us. Good luck.
Yeah. He said it so well. Under the Local Government Act, the Section 151 Officer of the Council, Sarah, is charged with the proper administration of the Council's financial affairs, and as such, she must select suitable accounting policies and also make judgments and estimates that are both reasonable and prudent. It's considered to be good practice for you members as part of the Audit and Standards Committee to consider the accounting policies that are going to be applied in the Statement of Accounts. The Council's accounting policies are specific principles, conventions, rules and practices that are applied in the production and presentation of the accounts. The policies are all shown in Appendix B of your packs, which is on pages 43 to 55. And we're required to disclose them in a note to the Statement of Accounts In that note, we only disclose policies that are either directly relevant or material to the council. There are no changes to the accounting policies from this time last year. The SIPFA Code of Practice also requires that judgments that we make in applying the council's accounting policies also be disclosed as a note to the statement of accounts, and they are shown in Appendix C on page 56. The disclosure of critical judgments enables users of the accounts to better understand how accounting policies are applied, and it also enables us to justify views that we have taken regarding any significant transactions and balances. The Code of Practice also requires us to disclose assumptions that have been made in the accounts about any future or major sources of estimation uncertainty. They are shown in Appendix D, pages 57 to 59. These situations might include those where us as a council have got either incomplete or imperfect information that will only be made better as a result of an event actually happening. The recommendations of the report are that you as the committee approve the proposed accounting policies, that the committee approves the critical judgments in applying the accounting policies, and the assumptions made about future or other major sources of uncertainty. And finally, that any approval for any further changes to the proposed accounting policies in the event of any new or updated guidance coming to light between now and when the accounts are audited be delegated to the Section 151 officer. Thank you. And if you have any questions at all, I'll be more than happy to answer.
Thanks, Craig. So as you can see, this is essentially like the rule book. These are the things that the accounting department has to follow in order to prepare the accounts. So does anybody have any questions of Craig in relation to these? They've been superseded now. Yeah. Barry, go on ahead.
The other policies internally created or under guidance of SIPFA, or they sit for, SIPFA saying this is what you will do.
For lots of things, SIPFA say this is what you'll do, and then mainly around the critical judgments and where we're making estimations about uncertainty, that's where we come in and give our views. They're all recorded within those appendices where we've actually made a view, but the majority of it is SIPFA guidance. Thank you.
Yeah, I think a lot of it's relatively straightforward. If you look at the list of different accounting policies that are prescribed, it's a standard list, isn't it, basically? And you either say, yes, you need to use this policy, or in the event that you don't have the relevant assets, then it's omitted. But it's the critical aspect that the critical judgments that are probably the most controversial potentially, aren't they? Yeah. No more questions then. Okay, so first of all then, can we approve the proposed accounting policies? Could I just have a quick show of hands, please? Yeah, thank you. Can we also approve the critical judgments applying to the accounting policies and the assumptions? I'll start again on that one. The council's critical judgments in applying accounting policies and its assumptions made about the future and other major sources of estimation uncertainty that will form part of the 2021-22 statements of accounts. Can we approve that, please? Yep. And finally, can we delegate to the head of finance, Section 151 Officer Sarah, the ability to make further changes to the proposed accounting policies to reflect the release of new or updated guidance, if applicable? Yep. Thank you very much.
Can I just ask that there's a line into that, and that the audit committee are made aware of that as soon as possible.
Yeah, I think that probably goes without saying, Mark. I mean, we would expect something like that to come back to the committee in the event that anything needed to be changed. Sure, you're happy with that, Alex? So, yeah. Right, okay, thanks. So moving on then, item 7 then, the draft statement of accounts for 2021-22, and Sarah's going to run through that for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The draft statement of accounts 21-22, the report details the final outturn position as at the 31st of March 22 and seeks approval for the draft statement of accounts for 21-22 to be approved for publication and audit by Grant Thornton, who are the external auditors. The current regulation requires that the draft statements of accounts to be completed by the 31st of July in order for them to be published on or before the 1st of August. It is intended that the statements of accounts will be available for public inspection between the 4th of July and the 15th of July. The external auditors will come in and commence the audit during the week commencing the 11th of July, and they should be completed by the end of October. Therefore, the audited statement of accounts will then be presented to the Audit and Standards Committee for approval on the 14th of November in order for them to be published by the deadline date of the 30th of November. I think the report actually states the 30th of September. That is incorrect. It should be the 30th of November. I'm pleased to report that the council has made a favourable variance of circa £4,000 for the year ending 31st of March 2022 on the revenue budget. A couple of sort of items just to point out to you in the statements of accounts, quite big numbers. So firstly, just on the cash flow statement, you'll see that there's some quite big movements around the purchase of short and long-term investments. It's sort of £500 million. This is not money that we are currently holding. This is just solely where the money is coming in. We are holding it securely, then it's going back out again. So it's accounting for those entries that are in and out. It isn't that we are holding large sums of money. The figure is higher than it has been last year, so it's just something to point out there. Also on the pensions fund, you may recall last year we had an increase in the pension liability of circa 20 million. This was down to the actuary carrying out revaluations and remeasurements because of COVID. Now we're coming to the end of COVID, the actuary has carried out revaluations and remeasurements again, and those liability figures have dropped back down to close to what it was previous year. So they've reduced back down to by a couple of million. So two sort of big sort of figure changing areas in there. Really pleased with the accounts that are being produced this year. I feel like every year we're producing the accounts, they are becoming more and more transparent, and the finance team have done a fabulous job compiling and completing the statements of accounts this year. So I would personally like to thank Craig for leading that this year. In the meantime, I'm happy to take any questions on the statements of accounts, as I'm sure Craig will be too. So thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Yeah, just going back to that cash flow statement that shows the very large sum of money, it's effectively an accumulation of multiple transactions. So what happens is if you put £14 million on deposit for 2 nights and then take it off 2 days later, then put it back on again, it all adds up. So that's why we've got a large figure. We've never actually had that amount of money to put on deposit anyway. It's just that you have to add up for the cash flow statement, the number, all the individual transactions. I'm right in that, aren't I, Craig? Exactly yeah. Right, okay then. Any questions then for Sarah?
Just I couldn't hear what you said earlier. You mentioned about circa £4,000. What was that?
That's the surplus on the general fund.
Right.
Yeah, on the revenue budget, yes.
Okay. Mike?
Yeah, can I also thank the staff? Having sat in one of those offices in a dark, dim past, I know the work that goes in. So please pass on my thanks to everybody. With regard to item 2.13 or 2.13, should I say, the collection fund, can you go into a bit more detail with regard to the deficits for the council tax and business rates? And it says the deficit shown will be repaid in future years. Do we have a timetable for that? Because we're showing that we've made a gain on the accounts, but actually there is a debt that needs to be paid there by the sound of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Council tax, we actually are in a very small surplus with now. So this time last year, council tax would have shown a deficit as a result of more people claiming council tax support. But as people have gone back to work throughout COVID, we've got back to pretty much where we were. So council tax isn't an issue at all. Business rates, it's showing there that there is a deficit at the end of March, is a cumulative deficit. So this time last year, with the collection fund, there's timing issues. So we have to declare what we think the deficit is going to be in January, so that the county council, fire, central government can set their budgets. And this time last year, the deficit that we declared was less than what it actually was at the year end. So although it shows 9.5 million, some of that is cumulative from the previous years. So part of the 9.5 million is due to Section 31 measures that the government implemented. So a vast majority of businesses have benefited through some kind of holiday or relief in their business rates. So the government has made a pledge to reimburse us for a large amount of that via a Section 31 grant, which is shown at the bottom of that table. So that leaves a net deficit from business rates of around 3.7 million pounds. And this time last year, we had the benefit of the Section 31 grant that we paid in to the business rates reserve. I know I'm rambling a little on to now. That we paid into the business rates reserve to cover this deficit. So I suppose in a roundabout way, what we're trying to say is that the government, via its Section 31 measures, last year and this year, have pretty much covered that. That the majority of that £9.5 million will be repaid during this year. Well, sorry, the 3.7 that's remaining at the bottom will be repaid this year, and anything left will be repaid the year after. But we do have enough funds to cover our share in the business rates reserve. Is that okay, or do you want me to try and explain anything else a little better?
I mean, I'm just looking at the 1.5 figure because I mean that's the council's share.
Yeah.
So the plan is roughly that the majority of that will be paid during this financial year and the remainder the year after.
Yeah, sorry, I've picked the wrong total.
No, that's fine.
Onto 3.7. I should have been saying 1.5.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that money is set aside in our business rates reserve from previous monies that the government have given to us.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thanks. Okay, man. Does anybody have any other questions? No? Okay, well, thanks everybody for all the work that went into, particularly you, Craig. I'm sure Sarah did a little bit as well. Are we happy then to approve these accounts for audit and inspection? Yeah. Okay, thank you. In that case, then we'll note the accounts and the committee has approved them. Item number 8 then, the Treasury Management Annual Report for 2021-22, and that's Craig again, please.
Thank you, Chair. The SIPFA Code of Practice on Treasury Management recommends that members should be informed of Treasury management activities at least twice per year. The Audit and Standards Committee therefore monitors and oversees the delivery of the Treasury Management Strategy through the receipt of a half-yearly report and this report, the year-end Treasury Management Report, which is shown as Appendix 1 to the covering report. All Treasury management activities during 21-22 have been carried out in accordance with the Treasury Management Strategy for the same year, and this was approved by Council in February 21. The Council utilises a company named Close to advise on all of our Treasury management activity, and that was the case during the whole of 21-22. We've managed to remain debt-free throughout 21-22, so i.e. no external borrowing has been undertaken. All investments that we've made have been made in compliance with the creditworthiness service of Close. The vast majority of investments that we make are with the government's debt management office, which is entirely to just ensure the security of our principal while we've got some relatively uncertain times. That does come at a cost, well, not a cost, a reduced income level. So I think our average average interest percentage was 0.005% during the year. So it's practically nothing, but it ensures that it's pretty much 100% secure. Annex 1 of the annual report, which I think's on page 162 of your packs, details the compliance of activity throughout the year with the prudential indicators that were originally set as targets for the year. The report recommends that you as a committee receive the report and approve it for reporting to Council on the 28th of September 22. Thank you. And again, I'm more than happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Craig. Yeah, I think what you said about the money being held by the government in effect is probably the safest thing. If we've got £7 million, we don't really want it to go to an Icelandic bank that then disappears it for us for 10 years or whatever. So, yeah. So do we have any questions then on this report for Craig? No? Okay, then. Are we happy in that case to agree to receive it and for it to be reported to the full council meeting on the 28th of September? Yep. Thank you. Item 9 then, urgent business. I've not been advised of any urgent business, so presumably there is none. And then item 10 is the committee work plan. Now we have a meeting that's been inserted there for the, when I get to it, the 25th of July. We don't actually have any business for that meeting. And because we've dealt with the accounts tonight, there isn't anything for us to do. So I'm asking if everybody's happy for us to dispense with that meeting and move to the next meeting is the 7th of September.
My apologies, just on the way that.
All right.
Anyway, so. That's
it. Well, that's excellent then, Barry. It works out very well for you. So are we all happy that we do that then? Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much then, everybody. And I'll close the meeting. Good night all.